Hey guys, it's Jack. I just wanted to talk to you today about a way that you can help support the podcast if you're not already. We would really appreciate it if you guys went and reviewed us on Apple or Spotify. Those reviews really help people find the podcast and help it get recognized. And, if you've been enjoying the show, we really appreciate your support. Another thing that you can do to support the channel is to become a Patreon member. So we have Patreon memberships that start at just $5 a month. And when you sign up, you get access to all of our episodes ad free. That's the big bonus for that. I mean, we also do some Patreon bonus episodes for our subscribers. But this is the biggest and best way that you can support the Team House channel and podcast if you'd like to. And we really appreciate that. So go and check us out at patreon.com/the Team House.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Eyes On, a weekly, reasonably well informed discussion of geopolitical events and about the time it takes you to drive to work or PT or whatever else you get up to in about 30 minutes. I'm Andy Milburn, former Marine Infantry Special Operations Officer, former CEO of the Mozart Group, longtime student of modern war. Not here today is Jason Lyons, who is awaiting back surgery. We should do a whole episode D on veterans' problems with backs. No, actually, on second thoughts, let's not do that. That could be an entire series. But anyway, delighted, obviously, to have D, who is our producer and my boss. D, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate your boss. I don't know about that. I don't think I'm anybody's boss, to be honest. I just
What do you
wanted to
have
make a.
lined up? What do you have lined up for us today?
I mean, it's the big news is the retaliatory strikes on the IRGC and
That's
their
right. Yeah,
connected militias and stuff. It's been a pretty
yeah.
busy.
So yeah, 100%. So bring everyone up to speed in case for some reason you got horrendously drunk around noon yesterday and slept through the whole thing. The United States conducted reportedly 85 strikes on four separate targets in Iraq and Syria, and D. Dee's figured out here how to. No, actually, I figured this out. How to share screen. This is an ISW map. Don't worry, guys. We're not going to get very geeky and academic here, but it drives me up the wall when we talk about places and we don't have a map to point to. This is pretty good map of the Syria-Iraq, Jordan border. These strikes that it shows here are actually militia strikes on U.S. bases as of late January, and they show strikes according to how many occurred, frequency, and you'll see Al-Assad. Some of you remember Al-Assad was a great rocket magnet back in the day when we were there, and continues that tradition. Of course, that's a massive base, but when you have much smaller bases there, like Al-Tanf and the little circle there marked Rukban is actually Tower 22. Strikes have a much greater effect. D, I'm gonna. You can see
Yeah,
my cursor here,
I see it.
right?
Yep, looking good.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So the strikes went in. There's a couple of places that many of your listeners will be familiar with. All right, and don't beat me up if I'm not getting it exactly right. But Al Qaim, roughly here. Then across the border in Syria, there's a place called Abu Kamal, both of which have been acting as kind of bases or depots for the Iranian-backed PMCs. Some of you will have seen on Twitter very dramatic secondary explosions here in Al Qaim. I would offer this, and we'll talk about it, in a moment, Deep. But it would have to be very, very stupid people who are left in those depots or those areas. The U.S. said they hit command and control facilities there, but also in a weapons storage depot, and that's where you saw the secondary explosions from. I would offer that whatever was in those warehouses was probably discarded or deliberately left, maybe because they didn't have time to move it or because they wanted to provide just a dramatic show to the United States and hopefully assuage some of the bloodlust. that is influencing our domestic politics. Who knows? But unlikely that. So those are two of the strikes. There was another one up in Dar es Salaam. It's still in Dar es Salaam province in the Euphrates River. Again, I may get beaten up if this is off target, but it's somewhere around here. And then there's a place called Akashat in Iraq, very close to the the tri-border region, roughly where I'm putting my cursor here. Akashat, that's been a long time. Iranian militia staging point. And interestingly enough, this is the heavily Sunni area of Iraq, right? And so the PMC very deliberately have set up fortified areas there, and that is what we have attacked. Hey, DB, but I've got to read out this one quote. We do ourselves no favors at all globally. How do you think the world's population are going to react? Many of our audience will say they don't give a shit, but when we talk about the information campaign, we've got this guy who in rather uninspired moment this morning said, this is Lieutenant General Douglas A. Sims, Director of the Military's Joint Staff. All right, that's a primary position. The beauty of the American bomber is that we can strike anywhere in the world at the time of our choosing. All right, shades of Dr. Strangelove, right?
Yeah.
This is, comments like the beauty.
It's like he's having an epiphany.
Strangely enough, the world's population is probably not in rapture about the beauty of the American bomber, and we probably need to be a little more cognizant about how we portray that. And it goes on, the usual stuff, by airstrikes targeting command and control, operations intelligence centers, weapons facilities, and bunkers, the usual rundown. Think about those, all right? A key thing, they didn't say key personnel, right? They didn't say, hey, we're going after these guys. It's interesting. And, because previously we did when we hit Soleimani. And by the way, when we hit Soleimani back in 2020, the guy who was killed with him was a guy named Mohandes, who is kind of his war name. He was head of Kataib Hezbollah. All right. So you see how all of this comes together. And, you will see in today's news a couple of in Iraq, some couple of interesting points. Okay, so first of all, their chart, the head of their armed forces, has come out and made a very angry statement about U.S. Violation, what he sees as U.S. violation of Iraqi sovereignty, and so has the Prime Minister. Saying that the reported casualties from 85 strikes, which were a total of 16 people killed and 34, I believe, wounded. Who knows?
I think it was 36 wounded.
36, yeah. In any case, he's saying the U.S. owes compensation to these people. The U.S. is saying that they were PMC militia. PMC militia are probably thinking, damn, what the hell are these guys doing there? Maybe they didn't get the word. It's kind of
right.
Collection. But so the Iraqi government is up in arms. But let's look at what's happened a little bit in the last few days. All right, the strike occurred on 28 January. All right, immediately, there were comments from the administration. We're going to, find out who did this. We're going to strike back. On 29 January, a guy named, sorry, that's my dog.
That's okay.
29 January, a guy named Brigadier General Ishmael Ghani, who is head of Quds Force, visits Baghdad. All right, all this is, obviously what I'm telling you is open source. I'm not going to...
The day after, right?
Yeah.
The day after the base was
hit. The day after, right? And he meets with the head of Kataib Hezbollah, all right, who is also the chairman. He has an official Iraqi position as chairman of the PMC, okay, the popular militia.
Working two jobs, man. It's not easy out there with inflation.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And Kataib Hezbollah, all right, remember he still had it. Kataib Hezbollah mans 3 brigades in the Iraqi army. You see how this is all linked, right? It gets worse. So this guy, and I'll remember, I'll remember his moment. Muhammad Ali is his last name, and he's called Al-Khal. All right, Muhammad Ali. Remember that name. 2019, U.S. Embassy was attacked by popular militia members, PMF members. They actually overran the compound. And they left graffiti, all right? There's photographs of graffiti. Among the graffiti left there was this guy's name, Al-Khal, all right? They were doing it in his name. So now, head of Kataib Hezbollah, head of PMC, official position, Iraqi government, Iraqi armed forces, actually under the MOI. Now, he is meeting with Ghani. And so speculating here, all right, Ghani tells him, hey, knock this shit off, fellas. You're going to get us in trouble, the big Satan. Or tone it down or whatever. The next day, right, 30 January, Kataib Hezbollah comes out and says, hey, we're not gonna hit U.S. targets.
It's very subtle and smooth geopolitical maneuvering.
Yeah. All right. So
it's like, here's a press release. We're not gonna hit anything anymore. We promise.
Yeah, that's exactly right. By the way, Jordanian F-16s participated in this strike yesterday. The Jordanian government is being non-committal about that, but yeah, they did. Normally these strikes, when the Jordanians are involved, are more than symbolic, and they have struck before in Syria 2 or 3 times. All right, these are strikes going after Iranian-backed smugglers. So my point is that they're on board too, but of course we weren't going to launch from Jordan and thus make Jordan even more of a target than it already is. That's why the B-1s took off from Lake and Heath.
Yes, I saw the two B-1Bs were in on it, and 10 fighter and attack aircraft. So there were a couple of Jordanian F-16s, but I saw that they were A-10s too. Where the U.S. assets taken off from besides the bombers?
Wait, did you say there were A-10s?
That's what I saw on Twitter yesterday, yeah, that there were A-10s involved in it.
I would be... Well, that's... Okay, let's get that out to the listeners. Maybe we can hear an update on that.
Correct us if I'm wrong, but I did see it that A-10s were in it. But where would where would U.S. fighters or attack aircraft launch from?
Well, the U.K.
Okay. They all go from the U.K.? Okay.
I don't know. I'm not... My sources here have to be open source, and I don't know, but I was tracking OSINT Intel, on Twitter when they took off from Lake and Heath, and I didn't.
Yeah, but wasn't that just the B1s? I think it might have been just the
B1s.
Yeah.
So anyway, it doesn't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm more interested in what happens at the pointy end, not where the fuck they took off from. And what happened in the pointy end, we've got to say, looks, I don't want to say symbolic, but again, 85 strikes sounds like a really concerted effort. But when you look at all the telegraphing that took place before that, it would be absolutely amazing if that dealt a blow to the Iranian militias' capability. And this is the point here, D, is, if we're not doing something that is really undermining our adversaries' capability. Remember, we talked about this, and I said a comprehensive strike, not in Iran, but Iraq and Syria, taking out, that middle to upper level tier Quds Force guys who are operating outside country. That there's all kinds of reasons why that would be a good move. I'm surprised we didn't do that. I'm surprised that we telegraphed this. Okay, the same day. All right, back to the timeline. The same day, we're talking about when Ghani visits Baghdad. Same day again, Kirby talks to the press. He says that we're going to definitely strike Iran. It's going to be, I forget the term he used, but multi-layered, something along that attack. It's but it's not going to be. He didn't say come out and say it's not going to be Iran itself. Although by the way, you owe me $20.
You owe me $20.
Never mind. We'll get back to this.
Okay. Okay. Put a pin in that.
No, they have not. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, they're very clearly messaging by omission that they were not going to strike Iran itself. Okay. And so when you think about it, and when you're saying, hey, I'm going to come after you, I'm going to come after you, I'm going to, really hit your IRGC dudes, and you keep saying that, and there's only a certain number of locations, and, the Iranians know that we know, blah, blah, blah. So it's very hard to avoid the perception that this is pantomime. I'm not saying it was pantomime. I'm saying that sadly the perception is.
Right.
And that is not what I'm sure the administration wants the American public to think. So I think, there's a little bit of strategic communication that has to follow this. And, in other areas too, you may have seen the report today. Remember last time you asked me about the attack, right? And the reason why I'm talking about this is because it's not to get some poor bastard punished who's now struggling with his conscience and and a mission and seeing it result in the loss of U.S. life. By no means am I trying to haul that guy in front of a firing squad, but it is important, obviously, to close any gaps. And drone and counter drone warfare is so dynamic that you've constantly got to be closing these gaps. And so that's why this comment that the attack drone came in on the heels of a U.S. drone, it deserves being dug into.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, I got to tell you, it doesn't make sense to me. And again, please correct me, guys, but I all our Type 3 and above drones have our U.S. Have what's called an IFF transponder. All right, that's identification friend or foe.
Andy, let me ask you real quick. Type 3 or 4, is that like military grade or like CIA?
No, it's all on size. All right,
okay,
so
got it.
Type 1 or 2 I kind of think of them as more very tactical drones used by tactical units. Right, this drone, by all accounts, was a longer range loitering munition, a one-way drone. Because it was rocket boosted, that's one of the few things we know about it. It's likely to have been a Shahed 136, but there are other things it could have been too. It doesn't matter. It was definitely of Iranian manufacture, and I say that because only the Iranians, the only such loitering munitions in the hands of militias, whether they're Houthis or whether they're PMF in Iraq, the only ones are of Iranian manufacture. That gets back to my point of intent is almost irrelevant when it comes to Iran in this case, because Iran has enabled these groups to be able to strike the United States. But interestingly enough, and this points again to the U.S. administration's keenness not to escalate, there's been very little released about the drone. It was again a one-way drone. When we have, I've seen kamikaze drone wreckage from big ones like Shaheds all the way down to switchblade type ones, and they leave wreckage. Right? They leave traceable material. In the United States, there's no country in the world that can trace that stuff better than the United States. And yet, very little has been released about this drone. My speculation here is that it is indeed Iranian, but the U.S. is being circumspect about releasing that information because it kind of paints both countries into a box if they do so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So getting back anyway to this thing about a drone coming in, the Shahed coming in behind a U.S. drone. Doesn't make sense necessarily because, I said Type 1. Most Type 1, I think Type 2 drones now have some kind of IFF transponder, but I may be wrong. And it could be that this was a perimeter security drone, a quadcopter, the US one, There is a task force 99, that repurposes commercial drones for U.S. military use. Again, this is open source. There's been interviews done with these guys. They're based in Al Adid, and they have something around 100 drones, none of which have IFF transponders. And maybe it was one of these drones. My point is this, Dita, this is an important issue. It's a chink in our armor, and we need to fix it. And we're not going to fix it if, unless we really dig into it. I'm sure that the military is onto it.
Well, I mean, if it is indeed the case that it followed in from a friendly drone, they have to fix it. I mean, we lost guys and girls.
And what we're talking about,
got to be some nerd somewhere doing this, like figuring it out.
Yeah. So, the other interesting thing is, and I've been on the other side of the fence here, so I'm not deriving pleasure into pulling all this out in the open. It is painful, but the other thing is that we've got to look hard at our drone defenses. Obviously, at these bases right now, typically. Our drone defenses consist of, a mix of stingers, either man-packed. A stinger is it's an 80s technology surface-to-air man-packed missile made famous by U.S. supply of these missiles to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan back in the 80s. Okay, it's in its day, it was a very effective weapon, but bear in mind, it's like 40 years old now. When it's mounted on a Humvee, several of them mounted on a Humvee with, fire control system and radar. It's called an Avenger system, all right? And that is typically often what is used in these bases. And combined with something that most Iraq and Afghanistan vets would be familiar with, which is called a CRAM. No, I'm not going to embarrass myself to try and remember what CRAM stands for, but it's essentially a cannon, right? Now, neither the CRAM, the Stinger, or the Avenger have ever shot down a drone in combat on operations. In fact, the Avenger hasn't even shot down a drone in laboratory conditions.
Andy, I'm not an expert at all, and I'll never claim to be, but that doesn't seem good.
No, it's not good.
Okay.
So my point is that we're still playing catch up on short range air defense, and we do have the Coyote system, which I mentioned. We've got EW systems that are I won't get into it, but they are. They're hit and miss effective, but the problem is that they are easy to adapt against. All right.
Right.
We've got a system called the Coyote, which uses drones as counter drone, little unmanned systems, and that is, I'd be interested to hear from the audience what their opinion is of these things. But yeah, again, short range air defense, anti-drone air defense is a huge issue for the United States, and we're behind, and we have been since 2015 when the Islamic State first started using unmanned systems, and everyone predicted at the time it was a matter of time before we started losing people. All right, and so the attack in Jordan, of course, the first time U.S. soldiers had been killed by aviation attacks since April 15th, 1953. Yeah, so it was a watershed moment, but it was predictable, and it was a long time in coming, and we've got to fix this, this short-range air defense problem. The radar that we have there, typically, the problem is visual acquisition is really tough with drones, as we know, especially when you think about it. That, the drone came in from the east, launched from Iraq. It was early in the morning, so it's coming in from behind the sun. You're talking about a unit that is not on a base that is not on combat footing. You probably got dudes gathered around outside the chow hall. It's just fortunate that more people weren't killed, and certainly that's that I'm sure that has changed. So visual acquisition is difficult. They did have a radar there. It's an AN-TPS 75. It's a phased array radar. Okay, I'm not a techie, but a phased array means it can shift focus very quickly. It's a very flexible system and it's a very capable system. Again, no explanation out there why it didn't pick up on this drone. And again, maybe it did and was mistaken for a friendly. One thing, of course, I've read in the papers about, Jordan's requested Patriots, which it has. And, there's the insinuation there that if we had Patriots there, then it, if this was within Patriot range, it wouldn't have happened. Well, maybe not. The Patriots are a very effective system, but they also cost $3 to $4 million a projectile, right? And you got a drone that costs a few $1,000s.
Not exactly cost effective.
It's not a good match.
Also, it kind of seems like this base was more of a staging base. So it was. I mean, I feel like the security's probably way tighter at bases that like JSOC launches out of or CIA launches out, like places like that, compared to like a staging base that helps like support.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets to my comment last time, I think, about the fact that yes, going ahead, we are probably going to see these patterns of small special operations based units. We used to call them SOC forwards, but the vulnerability is that these small groups who are light and flexible and highly trained and well equipped have to rely on a larger conventional force, all right, a larger conventional footprint. Until we can figure a way around that, we're going to have this vulnerability, and we need to focus on that because these guys are going to be the primary target. Why would our enemies go over after the hard targets, right?
Right.
Getting back to the signaling though, 29 January, John Kirby talks about the tiered approach, multiple operations, and types of targets, and then 1 February CBS comes out and talks about it's going to be attacked on Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq. So we just couldn't have been. We did everything but give them the coordinates, right?
Yeah. So my question for that was, did we do that on purpose to see where these IRGC assets went and like track them there? We spoke about this before we started recording. I feel like, was it like on purpose, or was it like just to like have them save face, avoid escalation, avoid a lot of human casualties?
It's a great point. So I definitely on purpose. I would say rather than, I think it's rather political reasons. I think there are unstated red lines, implicit red lines. I hate to use that term, but on both sides here, and both sides are trying to calibrate their reactions to deter or coerce the other side without tripping those red lines. All right, so it's this kind of kabuki dance, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think it was for intelligence reasons. I think if we want to trace these guys and follow the ants back to the nest, it's best not to hit them and have them execute a contingency plan. It's best just to follow them, keep an eye on them, establish pattern of life across the board, be more circumspect, and then hit them when it's really going to hit them, and make it such that we are taking a capability off the board here.
Right.
It does surprise me that we telegraphed it because it would have been within the rules, within the unspoken rules of the game. That's Richie. He suspects our landscapers of being Russian. Yeah, but it would have been within the unspoken rules of the game to kill Quds Force guys in Iraq and Syria, as long as it wasn't in Iran itself, right?
Right.
That would have been legitimate. So why warn them? Indeed, on over 2 or 3 days at the end of January, the Iranians very publicly pulled out their IRGC operatives from Syria and Iraq, to include a prominent guy in Syria. They even named him, or he was named, and the Iranians allowed him to be named. I mean, that's unprecedented, to announce it that way and pull them out. And ostensibly, that was to avoid the Iranian strikes. The Iranians have, Israelis. The Israelis have killed IRGC dudes on at least 2 occasions in Syria in the last 2 weeks. So, ostensibly it was, hey, this is happening, we're going to pull our guys back. But I can't help wondering if there wasn't another audience, maybe the United States. Hey guys, we're all clear.
Go ahead.
We're out, the next day,
it is kind of it's this weird dance.
Yeah.
That kind of makes no sense to a lot of people. And I understand not trying to escalate it to like where it's a full-fledged regional war. But, it's this weird dance that like a layman person just is like, what? Why? That doesn't even make sense to like let them know what's going, like, what's the point? It's just like a show.
Well, and here's the challenge now, D. The strikes against the PMC and the kinetic side of this is almost not worth watching, right? One hopes, I believe, that there is a comprehensive campaign being launched, and the kinetic part is the kind of the least effective but most visible tip of the iceberg.
Right.
And that campaign involves a lot of stuff in the cyber domain. We saw some kind of throwaway comments by the Pentagon that they are doing cyber stuff.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that what they're doing in the cyber domain is hurting Iran far more than Canada. I hope so, because that's a little hard. But I mean, there is that. There are, they'll be going after proxy operatives, tracking them with the view probably to taking them off the playing board. Doubtless they are gathering intel, targeting data on Quds Force guys. So there's a lot of things going on. Financial, we're not just talking sanctions, we're talking about the Treasury Department really going after in a kind of forensic financial analysis of these groups to take them down. Things that the U.S. can do, very well, and hopes that all of this is indeed happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't really make for a good headline.
No, it doesn't, exactly. And there is another, but there's also, there's another wild card here, D, that I know everyone's worried about, the U.S. side and the Iranians too, and that is that those are these militia, all right. Primarily, we're talking about the Iranian-backed, or no, I should stop saying that. Just the Shia militia in Iraq, many of which are Iranian-backed. But the point is, Iranian-backed does not secure loyalty in return. Ghani himself, the head of Quds Force, has said this, and I don't think he's not being completely disingenuous.
Sure.
These guys, they don't even, they're not even, a lot of them aligned to a great extent religiously with the Islamic Republic of Iran.
That's the thing too. It's like a dangerous game they're playing, right? Because they'll send them money and weapons, but like, and they're not under the command and control for the most part. So like these guys are basically independent operators that can do whatever they want and inflame tensions in a region that's already like on fire.
Yeah, absolutely, and so although Qatar, Hezbollah, and Iran are kind of doing a disinformation campaign or launching a disinformation campaign or information campaign to distance themselves from the attack, other militias in Iraq are being very bellicose. And there's one, and I'll remember its name in a moment, but it's got Hezbollah rolled up in its title too. But it's a large Quds Force-backed militia. It doesn't have the same headlines as Qatar Hezbollah, and has every all the capability to strike and hurt U.S. forces in the Middle East. So I am concerned about that. I'm concerned that, yes, we may be relying on Iran to be a rational actor, and that may be Iran's intention. But within Iran, but first of all, we can't treat Iran as being homogenous. There may be some Iranian parts of the administration are worried about U.S. response. Some aren't and want this to escalate.
That's kind of crazy, because you would think like these guys, at the end of the day, their main goal is like regime security, right?
Yeah.
Like you would think like, I want to stay in power. I want to still be the, whether it's the bureaucracy as a whole.
The thing is, I don't think that I don't. It's a long jump from the type of resistance we've seen in Iran to an actual overthrow of the regime.
Sure.
And honestly, the stuff like this going on in the United States banging its drums and is tending to unite the Iranian population behind the regime.
Sure.
like I commented last time. But our biggest concern, our greatest concern, are what these militia groups do next. And we can be confident that the U.S. will have a calibrated response, but it's going to make things dicey for U.S. troops overseas for some period of time. And I haven't even mentioned what's happening in the Red Sea, Dee. So this morning...
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, the U.S. Navy is fighting not nearly as casualty intensive on our side, but it's fighting a almost a Guadalcanal type scenario. I mean, not Guadalcanal, Okinawa type scenario. Where the U.S. fleet was during the first part of that campaign more under attack from the Japanese than the Marines who were ashore.
Yeah.
And the U.S. Navy is certainly doing sterling work out there. But here's an interesting point. All right, the ships like the USS Carney have become, I won't say household names, but awarded combat action ribbon, blah blah blah. This is like every sailor's dream. Yeah. But in all seriousness, the concern is this: that previously the Houthis have very clearly been attacking merchant ships under the thin disguise that these ships were heading for Israel. In fact, they've attacked 40 ships since 7 October, and not one of those was heading for Israel. Well, not one was Israeli-owned. So, it's obviously a very thin veneer of an excuse. But these latest attacks, the CENTCOM hasn't come out and said this, may have been aimed at U.S. ships, the drone attacks. So that's a concern because, as much as we may try and de-escalate, you watch a U.S. Navy ship be hit by, a drone, and I mean, we definitely are on the conveyor belt then to war. And that's not inconceivable, all right? Ships, defenses fail. There's a possibility of a swarm attack. But in any case, this morning, this is from CENTCOM Twitter, February 2nd, approximately, blah, 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 U.S. Carney engaged, shot down one unmanned aerial vehicle over the Gulf of Aden. This is the one that I think CENTCOM is suspecting was aimed actually at the Carney. Carney's been a big-time name in shooting these things down. So... and those attacks in the Red Sea continue.
Didn't we hit a couple targets?
3 weeks of U.S. and British attacks into Yemen. I mean, you can see.
I was just gonna say that, like, didn't we hit them recently? Like yesterday, we had a couple.
But it's such a game of whack-a-mole there.
Yeah. What I think that we did it specifically yesterday after we hit targets in Syria and Iraq. It's just like, hey, we could hit you anywhere, anytime. Doesn't matter. We could do it multiple times.
Damn it. Richie. Okay.
Richie wants in on the show.
this is, you can take a dog out of Ukraine, but you can't take the Ukraine out of the dog. Yeah, absolutely, D. So wait, there's something else I wanted to talk about before we got off. No, I have to save it for I have to. Oh yeah. Here's the thing. So very interestingly, Iran seems to be. If you look behind the scenes, Iran and Jordan seem to be trying to de-escalate each other. Okay, there isn't a lot of chest banging. Jordan has struck targets that are Iranian, mostly linked with smugglers. Iran now has struck into Jordan. There's no love lost, obviously, between the two countries. But Iran, for one, you see, Iran is having some problems in the West Bank, by all accounts. Okay, as far as getting resistance up and running there in the same way that Hamas was in Gaza. Iran's access to the West Bank would have to rely on Jordanian territory. They would never get official Jordanian permission. But my point is, they probably don't want to bring attention to smuggling routes in and out of Jordan, or ratchet up the tension there, because it's going to interfere with our operations going ahead. D, I think that's pretty much it for.
I got one more question
for now. And my dog is acting as though
Andy. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Would we or any other modern military be able to move assets without the O centers finding out? Like the open source people finding out?
I think very much unlikely. Okay?
Yeah, right.
So even when we move now, we move the National Mission Force. Thanks, and I know Jack's very.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got things like. You've got OSINT and Jack, right?
Yes. So
no, in all seriousness, so tactically, operationally, strategically, it's a transparent battlefield that includes all routes to and from the theater of operation. Yes, we have to rely that everything that we do, every move is seen, and that might have been part of the rationale behind us telegraphing this so openly, the fact that, look, we're not going to be able to disguise where they're going. Let's cut out the ambiguity so Iran doesn't think we're going after Iran.
Right. So what's one more? What's next? How long will these strikes last?
Ooh, hey, great. Yeah,
you already owe me $20, so I don't want to take more of your money. So let's not bet on it.
So we'll see strikes from days to weeks. All right, typically, and then kind of a leveling off, ratchet down, and then they'll spike whenever there is another act of provocation.
And
but as I said, but the connecting file under the scenes, out of the media is not seeing a lot of this, is a bunch of stuff happening in a campaign plan below the level of armed conflict. All right, and that will include cyber, it will include some special operations stuff,
covert stuff like intelligence.
A lot of the stuff that I mentioned. So that is what I imagine is going on. Again, this is all speculation. All my sources are open source.
Yeah. Andy doesn't spill the tea in public. He tells me in private.
No, I'm very.
I'm kidding.
God, my security clearance.
Oh shit! Yeah, I'm totally joking. Sorry, we'll cut that out.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
All
right, man.
Yeah, I'm good. You want to sign us off?
Yeah.
You want me to?
Yeah.
I'll do it.
You go ahead because.
All right.
Yeah.
That was Eyes On. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're listening on audio. Don't forget to rate and review it. If you have any questions, you can either go to our Patreon or you can email us at theteamhousepodcast@gmail.com. Anything else? That's it. Don't forget to tell your friends.
Yeah. Hey, also, please get the word out. And thanks again. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.